I've been in a few TV shows and a few films. Last year, I was in a film called Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which came out, and a few other stuff. So that's just kind of a little bit about who I am, or more so what I do. I was kind of sitting in, I think it was my screenwriting class for when I was in high school, um, and I started from the ending, which was these that final conversation between the two brothers as they were talking in the car, and I wanted to figure out how they got there. That's normally how I write my stories. I start from the ending, and then I work backwards because that helps with the motivation because the characters are driving the story as opposed to the story driving the characters. As far as making this, I wanted to shed light on households that are run this way, where there's a disparity between the siblings, or just environments where you know people aren't necessarily supported in the way that they would like to be. And so that festers and explodes in different ways. And sometimes you have kids that act out, and this is how that happens. And I wanted to put people in other people's shoes and just give them a chance to look at what that's like.
Was this part of a school project or did you make this on your own? What was the motivation behind producing this?
It was made just to be made and submitted to festivals and just, to get it out there just as a story. But there are different festivals at my school. There would be the 64-hour film festival, the Scarefest Film Festival, the music video festival, and then Moondance, which was like the big one of the school. And every year I would kind of make it a goal to, or not necessarily a goal, but more of a mission to hit each festival, to make a film for each festival, but not necessarily for the festival, but just to gain better understanding of filmmaking. Um, and so this one was made for that, but it was really just to gain a better understanding of filmmaking and try to make a story that I think could impact a lot of people.
What was it like working with scenes that, deal with such heavy subject matter? What's it like directing that kind of stuff? And, you know, um, everything felt really organic and real. What was that like? How did you get there?
I'll be honest, directing scenes and stuff like that, it's actually really fun because you get to create a space where everything is safe, even though the subject matter is dark and I will say awful because no human being should be put in situations like this. But when you're in there and you're we'll say working with the material with your fellow actors, and I'm saying fellow actors even though I'm also directing it too. It's just bouncing off of each other and trying to find the best way to tell the story um, for each character, because each character is their own individual and they have their own view, so they move their own way. So going deep down into those details and antics about, well, maybe you should slide this way and maybe turn your body just slightly will give that actor or maybe a new understanding of how their character moves or how their character might feel about something. And it's something as small as that could impact the whole entire scene. So that's kind of what it is when I'm getting down into it. That's why it's so I guess we'll say fun to direct these such dark scenes. You just kind of get in the headspace and move in the world as opposed to playing a character.
I had a follow-up question about directing action.
Yeah,
Can you tell us about that? You have a smile on your face. I'm guessing you enjoyed directing the action.
I do. I love directing action as well. It's well, as my dad says, action is a moneymaker. But at the same time, regardless of if it's a moneymaker or not, actually, I'll tell you guys something funny that happened. In school, one of my teachers said, action movies never have substance, and I wanted to prove her wrong. So I started trying to understand how to tell a story where you get wrapped up in the character, and so their actions make sense, and so it's motivated 100%. You can't poke any holes. You can't, no, because this is the story. This is what it is. This is what's real. You know, this is what this story is. So that's kind of where my motivation comes for telling stories with action, as well as it getting people to pay attention, because when you're telling a story and you're trying to get people to understand someone else's point of view, sometimes a slap in the face might get you to wake up and actually pay attention to what you're watching.
We had a comment about the lighting. somebody thought the lighting really worked for your movie, which is the a great compliment whenever you're a filmmaker. Can you tell us about, uh, what was kind of the motivation behind the lighting aesthetics?
When I was writing the movie, I could see it in my head. This character sitting in this chair with this light, and it was spilling over his face in this certain way. So I went searching for different lights that fit that of what I was looking for. So I would do research on, okay, so no, this light's too hard if I use a mole, or no, this light's too, if I use a Fresnel, so maybe I should try and use a China ball. Oh, the China ball gives the right, diffusion effect over the side of the face. Just looking into the minute details of how these lights affect how they shape a character's face. And so I made sure I paid great, or at least tried to pay great attention to detail as far as how each character was lit in which scene and why, as well as over the scenes where he's a kid, there's like this little grainy film effect. There was supposed to be this whole other thing where there was a green screen, and me and the other character were going to be moving the bodies of the parents behind them in slow motion, but we couldn't do all of that stuff. It was just, it was too much. But that scene was lit in a very specific way so that you could have this person in the front, in the foreground, and in the background you could have something else, and in the middle ground you have the parents that are lit in their specific way, and just kind of like that, just looking at how each layer fits together and how it can best translate and tell my story.
Can you elaborate a little bit about the importance of accurately or lighting melanated skin, and why that was a huge mission of yours, and how you worked with one of the cinematographers at your school to make sure that you fully comprehended what was necessary in order to make it look like that?
That's why I did so much research in general as a whole, because of that. I was looking at the way that light reflects off of, or trying to find different, you know, uh, when you're making here, I'll go down into the details of it even more. When you're making a pitch deck, which is something that is required of you before you make a film, so that you can get the real idea of what you're making, the real picture, and see it. You have to find reference photos, and I found that I couldn't find a lot of reference photos with African American people that fit the vibe of what I was looking for. That the light spilling over the person's face, as well as making sure that they're glowing and popping away from the background, and not being just flushed away by lighting. So I tried to do a bunch of research and trying to find what lights fit best with African American skin. And so that's what went down into the details of searching through moles and Fresnels, and landing on China balls for the diffusion. That's where that all came from, as well as looking for different color temperatures that fit as well, that light off the skin very well too. Good question.
What ended up being your sweet spot color temperature?
It was just whatever ended up being the China balls. Nice, nice. I think it's I want to say 3,500 Kelvin, but I could be wrong. That could be two, but it's just something, whatever I had in that China ball, whatever fit with that was what it was. Yeah.
I really want to talk about the festival stuff with this project, but before we go into that topic, I just kind of want to hang on this for a minute, because you were talking about struggling to find comparable lighting scenarios. So, and you made this. How old were you when you made this project?
That was my senior year. I think I was 17.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, that had to be a kind of a formative experience in and of itself, just like, trying to do that research and finding there's really nothing out here. And that's a huge problem. So I'm curious, just like, emotionally, mentally, like how that experience and looking for that and not being able to find it has impacted you or influenced you as a filmmaker.
It was actually really fun, because searching for a new way to do things, it's I don't know, it's just something about it, just finding different parts to piece it together that make it all work, and finding different lighting scenarios, or different techniques or tools that I can use that make it work and fit together, was just that was more fun than, I wouldn't call it a work thing. It was just more so, this is just what I'm looking for. This is what I'm on the search for. This is what I'm on the hunt for, So it just came it just kind of was just moving pieces and finding what works and what doesn't. And I remember the day I finally got the equipment to do tests. That night, I was running tests with my cinematographer at my kitchen table, figuring out how this light would work and how it would wrap around and fit all together. So, you know, it's just more fun.
I love that, like, as dark as the content was, you're just like, oh, it's a blast. Like, there's all fun things. I'm just curious because, you know, as a young up and coming Black filmmaker, not being able to find a lot of work out there that you could really use, you know, to build your pitch deck. Do you feel like, you know, like that seems like a problem? Do you feel like this is a problem, that there isn't more content out there that I can look to as inspiration? And like, do you feel, you know, how has that affected your like outlook on your future as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely, a problem, because there shouldn't be a disparity of not just there shouldn't be a disparity of images that I can find of Black people lit nicely in a nice place. Like that shouldn't be a problem. So yes, I feel like that's something that, I mean, should be fixed. And in the future, I mean, as far as what I see for the future of, or what was the second part of that question?
Yeah, just how you feel like that influences you, you know, in your future for filmmaking.
Right. Yeah. So getting more images out that depict African American people in, you know, nice lighting with, you know, nice clothes and looking like, you know, generally nice people, nice general people. That's just kind of more so what would be a nice thing to see. Yeah. And it seems like the world is moving toward that direction, which I 100% love, but just more of that, finding more images and more places where we can show uh what that's like.
I actually have a question about like sort of the opposite of that. Do you find that being a filmmaker of color, that people take your subject matter a little bit too seriously? Like, you know, because this is obviously a film of a young Black man killing his parents. Were people like looking at you oddly, or like think, you know, questioning like your background, you know, like taking something fictional to be a little bit more non-fictional than normal?
No, I actually I've never gotten that question. No, it doesn't seem like people take it too seriously. It seems like people look at it and watch it and enjoy it for what it is, which is, you know, a film about, like you said, an African American kid killing his parents and what that emotional festeration is like. So people normally watch it and watch it for what it is. And no, I don't get people asking me really questions about how it affects my personal, you know, life.
Although I will say that at the festival, I had the pleasure of meeting your mother.
Yeah.
And she's just like, he's fine. We're all fine. Everything's
Yeah.
okay. Nobody should be worried.
Yeah.
So,
I love my parents. They're great. Yeah, my parents. I would never kill my parents. That would be wild. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Thank you, son.
So we had a student in the chat that had a question asking if you were the one that did the editing.
Yeah. So the day we got the day we finished shooting, which was like a Sunday night, I had school in the morning. I stayed up all night and I edited a first rough cut of what I wanted to see, because I already knew what I wanted the movie to look like. So I edited a first draft rough cut, and I gave it to my editor. I said, "Here's a rough draft. Do your thing." And then he took it from there and then added some things here, and we kind of worked together as far as, you know, splicing this here, and oh, maybe this shot should be a little shorter. Oh, I like that. You know, how you intercut that there, you know, just working it out that way, and massaging the material until it became, you know, what it is that you guys see.
So we have a couple projects in production right now, and one project specifically has a lot of car scenes. And so you have, you know, a lot of shots in a car. And so technically speaking, we actually do have our cinematographer for that production here on the call. So that's
Oh, no.
Isaac. So yeah, I was immediately thinking like, oh man, we can ask some really great questions and get some advice, hopefully, about what maybe was it like, you know, kind of shooting through the windows, and did you have problems with reflections? Like, and Isaac, please chime in any questions that you have. So yeah, any advice?
Shooting in the car was really fun, actually. Most of the stuff, when you guys ask me questions, I'm going to start off by saying I had fun while I was doing it, because solving these problems it's just what I love about filmmaking. And so when we were shooting through the car, from the script phase, I was like, okay, so how am I going to shoot in this car and make it interesting? Because you can shoot in a car and it just be boring. How do I draw people in? How do I create frames within frames inside of this car? And so I found a car rig, put it on the side of the door, and you can open the door and slam the door, but the camera stays on the car. We also used a tripod. We put the tripod outside of the car. We would roll the window down so we don't get, you know, a reflection. We did have a problem when we were shooting in front of the vehicle with the lights and all of that stuff, but we found a way to kind of hide them within our background. It was just kind of, you know, sitting on set and really working with one another and talking to each other and figuring out what works and what doesn't, and how we can better fill the frame. As I think it's what's that? I don't want to be improper, but I think it's mise en scène, which is, you know, things in the foreground, background that all filled with space and just making it all work together, especially with lighting, and especially with, you know, your framing as far as being inside of this car, just making sure everything works together.
How many versions of the script and like different pre-production materials did you have before you had the final one?
That's a good question. Okay, hold on, let me think. Okay, I got you. I finished the first draft while I was sitting in class the day that I started writing it. And then I showed it to my teacher and I was like, what do you think? And she said, and shout out to Miss Ferrier, because that was the teacher that I showed it to. She said, I see the direction that you're moving in. Keep going. I said, okay. So I sat back down and I started working on it some more, typing it out, show it to her. She's like, okay, keep going. So I go home, I'm on the train, I'm still writing, tweaking, fixing, you know. By this time, I already have the 8 pages. The 8 pages are done. You know, I'm tweaking, you know, well, moving this here. Okay, I like this line, I'll take this line out. And as I'm writing, I'm envisioning the place that I'm in. I'm hearing the dialogue between the characters, and I'm trying to see what's realistic and what isn't, and being completely honest with myself as like a subjective viewer of this script or this movie or whatever. And so I get home and I'm like, hey mom, I got this thing that I've been working on. Would you take a look and see what you think? And my mom helps me with, you know, correcting my spelling, because I suck at spelling. And then once she's done helping me correct the spelling, I look it over again and I say, okay, well, is this the story that what am I trying to say here? And then I show it to my dad, and me and my dad talk about it. We chop it up and he gives me different, you know, little bridges is what he calls them. Some things that I'm missing here and here that could, you know, fill the story together. And then I look at it a little more. I say, maybe, okay, so what draft is this? Well, we're on draft maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4. And this is just in one day. And then the next day I wake up and I'm like, okay, well, let me think about this a little more and let it simmer and marinate. I'd say maybe over the course of a week, maybe by Friday, I have 6 drafts, maybe 7 drafts. And then let's say I started on Monday. And this is just letting it marinate and tweaking and fixing and making sure it's as key as possible, you know. So by that Friday, I'd say the script is done and I'm moving on to production, because I'm saying, okay, well, the script's done. Now I'm going to shoot in about maybe a week or 2. And then I start moving towards shooting.
I have to know, I know your parents are like, I met your mom, she's like, everything's fine, you know. So
Yeah.
But what was the reaction from your parents the first time they read this draft? Were they concerned, or were they like, oh yeah, this is pretty typical kind of material?
No.
I mean, it's pretty pointed towards the parents, so
Yeah.
it's interesting that you collaborated with them so much on it.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
My parents know that I when I was younger, I would always say like, what if this or what if that? What if dinosaurs fell from the sky? You know, what if the car flipped over right now? Or what if I became Superman and I just used laser eyes and just shut up, you know, just crazy stuff, you know, crazy stuff. And so when I showed it to them, they were not, they didn't have any reaction at all. They were just like, yep, this is just the type of stuff that he likes to create, the type of stuff that he likes to watch, you know. So this is just what he's making, you know. They support me, they love me. I love these guys, they're great.
That's awesome. I have two kids that are also into filmmaking, and
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have reacted the same. I would have
Yeah.
paused for a moment at least.
Yeah.
I would have been like, "Ugh, might be sleeping with one eye open for now."
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
No.
Your work ethic is incredible. So like kudos to you. That is
Thank you.
amazing. How do you feel about just like violence in Black films and like the use of it, and like do you feel that it's always necessary, or like was that something that you contemplated when making your script, like about how violent you wanted it to be or not be?
Mm-hmm. See, I didn't think about it like that, because I didn't think about it like violence within, you know, well, let me rephrase. No, I didn't think, hey, I'm putting violence in the movie, and I didn't think how it would affect, you know, the story as a whole. But it goes back to the whole thing of trying to figure out how to tell a story as truthfully as possible. And when you're telling a story as truthfully as possible, especially a story like this, it always hits a boiling point. There's never a space without action as far as a story like this. Now, if I was telling something else, like a love story, then no, there'd be no need for violence. But when there's a need for violence, then, you know, it just so happens to be within the film. And as far as it being within Black films, I think violence is just something that is what it is. If it's in the film, if it's not in the film, you don't ask, you know, Rachel Crowe why he was in 300. You know, it's a movie with violence, and if you don't like the violence, then it might not be the content for you. But at the same time, there's going to be other content that doesn't have violence that could also be enjoyed by a larger audience of people. It's just so happens to be the projects that I gravitate to. You know, I like violent stuff. You know, what can I say?
You and I both. Awesome. I just wanted to get your perspective. Thank you.
Yeah.
You got quite a few laurels for this film. So talk a little bit about you know, that whole process and where you've been able to go and what kind of doors and access you've been given because of this film. And, you know, and specific awards and accolades too.
All of the accolades and stuff, all of that, the shout out for all of that goes to my mom as far as pushing that and making sure that the film actually gets out there. Because when I make something and when I do something, I'm like, okay, it's done. Okay, moving on to the next thing. So she helps me to say, okay, well, Dusan, you gotta promote it, you gotta put it out, and you know, she helps me with submitting to different film festivals and getting the right doors open, or putting me in front of the right doors so that I can then open them and move within the space, you know. So shouts out to my mom for all of that stuff. But as far as getting the laurels and stuff, you know, it's cool. It's fun to be a part of the festivals and to meet different filmmakers. And I'm glad that my mom put me in those environments to meet different people too, that I can then work with in the future, or you know, things like that. So that's kind of where that came from, the achievements aspect. Shouts out to Mama Bear for that one.
That's awesome. I'm gonna definitely make my kids watch this recording.
Yeah, you should.
How much appreciation he has for his mother. Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's awesome. Just going back to, we were talking about you cutting the first rough cut.
Mhm.
How different was that first rough cut to the final cut of the film?
It actually wasn't too different. There wasn't very much to change, because even from the script phase, it was cut to, you know, it was, you know, fade in, or, you know, it was camera angle shot, you know, we see brother with face half lit, you know, it was already in the script. So when it came down to editing, there wasn't really much to change. There were some nuances and flavors and feelings that I just couldn't necessarily hit, because I don't have that particular editor's eye, but I have a general idea of what I would want to see and how I want to make it done. And that's where my friend Aiden, shouts out to Aiden, he came in and, he helped me with those small tweaks that would, piece it all together nicely. He put the what do you call it? The creme brulee sprinkles. No, creme brulee is a type of food. The crouton sprinkles over the salad, if you will. You know what I mean? That
There you go.
the sauce, the ranch, the olive oil,
I want to talk about you being in the film. So you wore a lot of hats, like we'd mentioned, and I think we were talking about that actually before you got on the call, about how many roles you had in this. I mean, you wrote it, directed it, produced it, you did the first cut, but you also starred in it. So what was that process like? Especially with the director's hat on, directing while you're acting in front of the camera.
It was a good time. It was just a good time. I would have my parents, they would stand behind the monitor. I would do a take and I would kind of know what direction I want to move in as far as talking with my actors and rehearsing before the scene starts. And everybody would kind of get an idea of what each character's intentions are and how we would want that feeling to be. And if we're not exuding that, then, or I would go and I would watch it back, or I would turn and look and say, well, I don't know, does that feel like real? Does that feel good? And they're like, yes, it works, or no, it doesn't work. And, I'll watch it and get another take or do it again, and so on and so forth. And, wearing different hats was fun. It was fun because I get to get even deeper into the story. I got to create this world and really be there too. And that was a much different experience than just being the director, which is fun. Both are fun, but it's a different experience when you're both. And the editor too. And sometimes come up with the cinematography too. And then also some of the, the nuances of the score as well. It's just all different stuff, different hats that fill different spots, that just make it all come together. And shouts out to Pops for pushing me and helping me to understand that I can kind of bridge these pieces myself,
So did you always know that you were going to be the lead in the project? Were you like from the day one, you're like, I'm writing this for myself?
For this particular one? No. At first I was going to try and reach out to my friend Ben, but I was like, I don't know. I think he might have been in Italy at the time. So I wasn't sure. So instead of casting him, I was like, maybe I'll just do it. Because the film before this one, the film before this one was Reese, where I was supposed to have this character played by one of my friends, but they couldn't do it. And then I asked one of my other friends and they couldn't do it. So I had to do it. And I was like, oh, well, acting and directing wasn't as hard as I thought it'd be. Maybe I'll try it again, and that's kind of where my chance was to try it again, because, my friend couldn't do it, it was just.
Yeah, things you got to do out of necessity, right? Happen all the time. And sometimes they're, we call them happy accidents. Like sometimes really awesome things happen, just they work out that way. It's not something that you intend. So it was you, but it was also your brother, right?
Yeah.
That played your brother in the film. So what was that like?
I always knew I was gonna. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna ask. Your brother is older than you.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to essentially boss around your older brother, right? What was that like?
Oh, I wish that's how it went. No. It was so first I'll say yeah, so I always knew I was gonna cast him. I wrote the character thinking this is who's gonna play this character. I already knew it was already done. So when we were on set and we were working together, Dante's Dante. I love Dante. He's my brother. So, working with him it's always a good time. It's fun. It becomes a challenge sometimes because he's my older brother and I have to, sometimes, tell him or, guide his character but it's all a part of the job, he just so happens to be the actor that I'm directing right now. He also just so happens to be my brother, it's that kind of thing. And a working actor, because it just so happens to be that kind of thing, but it's still a good time.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's great that you're able to work together and work together so well and get
Yes.
such wonderful dynamic between you two and such great performances from both of you. So you mentioned the score, and that was something that I wanted to talk about.
Mhm.
Something that I'll tell you that after we met at the film festival in California, I left with the rest of my group, Steeltown filmmakers and everyone. And I was like, man, I meant to tell him that the score was just so amazing.
First, I'm going to say shout out to Graham Southern, who is the composer, who I would be on the phone with, like, okay, well, I'm not sure if I like this ticket sound here or this instrument. Can we, I don't know, lower that or switch that out with a guitar? When I first got on the phone with him, I said, hey, I got this. When I first got on the phone with him, I said, hey, I got this this sound or this instrument that I'm really looking for from this one Childish Gambino song, 35 Point. I don't remember, but it's off the White Album. That album is a masterpiece. But once I got that sound and those instruments, I sent it to him and I said, well, these are the kinds of beats that I want to fit within this spot, or just where do you see music as well? And we just kind of went back and forth and sent songs from I sent him songs that I liked, and he was just kind of working it and piecing it together, and he would send me drafts, and we would just kind of talk about it. And kind of like on set, when we would look at the lighting or look at the cinematography, it would be a conversation and fitting what best tells the story for the characters' emotions. How are they feeling? What should the music ramp, that kind of thing. And how long, and maybe there's a ticking sound, or, well, because he's waiting, everything just has a specific meaning, I guess.
Curious, for your crew, were those all peers for you, or were there a lot of adults that were helping you make this project as well? What was that mix and dynamic like?
So they were mainly peers. My cinematographer was a peer. My AC was a peer. My lighting guys, which is my Uncle Gino, he's more like my uncle, but what was it? Oh man, I want to make sure everybody gets there. What was the other guy's name who helped with Mauricio? Yes, Mauricio. He helped with lighting as well. He goes to USC, but we all talked and had extensive conversations about what would work and what doesn't. And then who else was on set? Well, I think that was, oh no, and then Aiden was there. Aiden, who was the editor. The editor was also on set helping lift C-stands and like set up lights and stuff. 90% of us were high schoolers. And yeah, so most of us were peers.
That's very impressive. What about your composer?
No, my composer's not a student.
He's been out of college maybe 2 years.
He's been out of college for 2 years. Where did we find him?
We found him through the guy who did your Scarefest. The
O'Malley.
editor, he referred him.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
the composer got
The
referred
USC.
to us
Yeah.
by someone at USC that
From
also helped on
project.
another project. Yeah, that's how we met. Graham Southern. Shouts out to Graham Southern.
That kind of leads really nicely into the next question I had about networking and how you built your crew and your network, and how that has come to play in this projects before and after it. And especially I think that's helpful for most of our students obviously that are in Steeltown are working with each other within their own within our own program. And then some of the students have projects that they do outside, they do through school, so they do it with peers that they have in those situations. But how important do you find that that aspect of filmmaking, just networking and building that like roster of people you can go to?
It's incredibly important. It's probably, I'd say I don't want to say it's 90% of the job, because every part of filmmaking is 90% of the job. There's not 1% that's not higher than the other. So yeah, getting a crew is very important, and sometimes it can be difficult, especially depending on your circumstances or environment or surroundings. Maybe not everybody's as interested as you are, So you gotta just find those people that are just as passionate as you are, that care about oh my goodness, did you see how John Wick just jumped out the window and landed on the crash mat, bro? Like, you got to find people that like actually care about that stuff. And those are the people that you ask to be on your crew, and even if a person is sitting in the class, you got to, pay attention and see if they actually, are, retaining the information and want to be a part of, something more, and then you go to them and you ask them, hey, you're going to be a part of the crew, or you get your everything you need together, which could be also your pitch deck, your script, your shot list, your schedule, your call sheet, all of that stuff. And you say, hey guys, look, we're ready to shoot. You want to be a part of this? Yes or no? And then they say yes, or they say no. And if they say no, you go somewhere else. Just like that.
Earlier on, were you ever like a one-man crew, and what was that like? I know a lot of us TAs and some of us students, the camera, the sound, the lights, the director, the actors, the grid.
Yep.
So like, what were those experiences like, and how have they shaped you to be where you are now?
Oh my goodness, I just can't believe I keep saying this over and over again, but it's so true. Those experiences were also good times too, because my mom was actually at one point my sound guy. And I was running the camera, and my brother was like this extra for this short film where he had to be dragged on the floor, and it was this guy, and it was just a lot going on. And my dad runs the props, so it's just small things that when the one man band is going on, even if it's just you and your family just putting it together, just doing it, it's okay, because eventually you'll get better. You'll say, okay, well, I don't like this part. Okay, so maybe I'm gonna tweak that the next movie. Oh, I don't like this part. I'll tweak that the next movie. Just paying attention to which parts you can go more in depth with that develop your cinematic language.
Pulling a crew, the thing that I've noticed about when Dusan was struggling, like his freshman and sophomore year of high school with pulling a crew versus like his junior year, it seems like then the tables turned and everyone seemed to want to be a part of his crew. So I think the thing that helped for him to get to that point was being very organized in pre-production and really exuding the confidence that, hey, this is a project that I'm passionate about, and them seeing his passion. And that kind of created an environment where, hey, they wanted to be a part of the excitement too. So I would recommend for all of the other, for all of the young filmmakers that are on here to have a strong direction, a sense of direction of where you're going, and to have confidence when you're recruiting your crew. Don't ask them, just say, hey, I want you, compliment them. If you know that they're a hard worker and they're very passionate, you got to compliment them and say, hey, I love your work. I love what you did on this. I want to, let's work together. You got to be excited in order to get your fellow filmmakers to be just excited about your project and want to be a part of it too.
We tell our students almost that exact same thing, Joyce. So thank you for saying so, because do you all hear that? It's all about organization and having a vision.
Yeah, Joyce, we might be making you an honorary teaching artist. So just, stand by for that. So there's another question from our student Caleb in the chat. Going forward, what's your dream job to get to? Do you want to be a director on a blockbuster film, famous producer, cinematographer? What are your big goals?
That's a good question. See, blockbusters are cool. If I got the chance to make a blockbuster, I would. But if I got the chance to make a, indie project about some dude, who started a, underground empire, like, I would do that. Or if there was a movie about a guy who's a veterinarian that takes care of blind dogs, if I find a story and I find it interesting, if it has something that, piques my interest, I'll do that. I don't really have necessarily like a dream role. Well, actually, that's not true. I do. But as far as acting, as far as directing, producing, cinematography, that kind of thing, not really. But I have stories that I have written, or stories or features that I've written with my dad or written by myself that I want to make in the future. And those could be dream jobs that I want to make, because they're things that I've written, but as far as like a one set blockbuster or this or that would solidify my like achievement per se. I wouldn't say that I have one as far as being filmic, other than affecting change.
Do you think you want to continue down the path to be that multiple hat situation where you're producing, directing, writing, acting, all of the things, or do you feel like you are gravitating towards one particular role over another?
I honestly feel like I can't have one without the other. Like I've come to a point where I just can't have one without the other. They just go so hand in hand that it, the process, I have to be a part of the process because this is something that I'm creating. This is something that I'm helping to shape. I'm putting this in front of people's eyes and they're consuming this information. So I have to make sure that it's handled with the right care. And the only way to do that is to wear different hats if I have to.
I love that. I love how seriously you take the responsibility of storytelling.
Yeah.
I think is something really important and really something that's worth mentioning for students and anybody that is, aspiring to be a filmmaker to kind of keep that in check. And I just also love how happy and like and passionate you are about this. Like everything, you're just like, I just love all of it. It's so great.
Thank you.
So yeah, it does. I think that kind of passion drives really good content. I mean, it's, we've seen it firsthand. We've done, we do a lot of client work in addition to our students doing their own creative projects. And there's a stark difference in the outcome when you have something that you have to do versus something you want to do. And, and that passion that if it's really there, it really drives it and you create something really amazing out of that. So I think I think that plays heavily into the outcome. Just really quickly, I want to touch on, where this particular project has fallen in your filmography. So this, you said, was a couple of films. And when did you first start making films? And, on the timeline of your filmmaking career so far, where did this project fall?
So my first short film that I ever made was in middle school with this thing called GFS, which is Ghetto Film School. And I had to make a silent film that had to be, what was that, 3-4 minutes? And I decided to, I don't know what I was thinking. I decided to make, GFS. I decided to make it about this kid whose dad accidentally teleported himself to Mars and his son had to find him and piece all the puzzles together. So that was the first short film I had made. And then after that, I didn't make any more, but I was still writing incessantly until high school, where I got to continue to make more films. And I made about 4 films every year until about 4 films every year, and also helped on a bunch of different sets whenever possible. So it's almost like every weekend I'm on a different set, whether that's a senior set or a freshman set or a sophomore set or a junior set, just any set I can get on. I was trying to be there, even if I was some sound guy or PA. But as far as where this serial falls in my filmography, what a weird thing to say. Oh, that's so weird. As far as my, I'll say short filmography, because I'm not making films yet. I'm making short films, but as far as my short filmography, I made one after this, or no, was it Serial? No, was it Serial? Was it Trash Serial or is Serial Trash?
Trash. No, Serial Trash.
Okay, so it goes Serial, then this other movie I made called Trash, then this other movie I made called The Longest Day, which was a project for one of my classes.
I'm curious as to who your inspirations are. So who are you watching and consuming, and whether that was when you were young or currently, who do you draw from for inspiration?
Good question. Okay, so obviously, we'll go top 5. We'll go top 5 because you got to go top 5. Top 5, I'm going Spike Lee, and this is not in any in particular order. Spike Lee, Anton Fuqua. Then I'm gonna go. I like Christopher Nolan. I like his style and how grand his stuff is. I like Fincher for how precise his camera movement is. And then I'm gonna go Who's my fifth? I'm gonna go Ryan Coogler, because the way he set up Fruitvale is also the way that I set up the short film that I wrote called Reese. Uh, just the same. Just it inspired it a lot as far as putting the story together, as well as the story that my dad told me when I was making that whole thing. That created that whole little cinematic language. So Ryan Coogler has to be in the top 5. So that's the.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's some Pittsburgh connections there. You know, we had Fincher in Pittsburgh, folks on this call that worked on his set that they did Mindhunter in Pittsburgh for
wow.
a couple of, for the first, both seasons were shot here. Yeah, Ian worked on that. And then we could tell you stories. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mindhunter, that show was very good. It kind of broke a lot down, and I was just like, whoa, this is massive. It just kind of it did a lot for me. I'll say that.
I worked on Ma Rainey too. Did you were you in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, you did Ma Rainey. That's wild, man. What was that like? What was that experience like?
I was an electrician.
Nice.
I was just making everything look pretty. I was on for a few days.
That'd be interesting if we go back in time. Maybe I'll be able to spot you. Be like, oh snap, what's up, man?
Small world, right?
Yeah, super small.
Yeah, and Anton Fuqua, they're from Pittsburgh. So
Yeah,
we actually know Curtis is in our Steeltown circle. That's his brother. And yeah.
His brother was actually on set. I got to meet his brother. He was very, very, very cool. Very nice guy.
So your mom, who said that you are extremely humble, which I was thinking, swear to God, like 30 seconds ago, I was just like, I wanted to also bring that to everybody's attention. It's super important. We tell our students this all the time, like, be humble. Don't be a jerk. You don't have to be. It's a new day in the filmmaking world, like that old school mentality of, being terrible to people on set. And it's just, that's not something that we condone. And we're really working hard at Steeltown to change that. So, and I just feel like you're really embodying that, and kudos to you. And please don't lose that. Like, you're going to grow and you're going to keep doing amazing things. And we hope that you're going to be super successful, and don't lose that. Hold on to that forever, because it will just, people will want to keep working with you because of that. So she said that you're extremely humble. So I serve as his biggest cheerleader, realizing that he's been blessed with a tremendous gift, as it's my responsibility to help allow his voice to permeate and spread throughout the world with those that will gravitate towards it and appreciate it. And yes, like, you're very fortunate to have such awesome, supportive parents. It's so amazing. And it shows too, like, you can tell, it's really the way that it's influenced your work as a filmmaker. I think as a person that you're able to keep that attitude, like, keep it up, because it's just, I think that's one of the most, I'm finding one of the most inspiring things about the conversation that we've had with you over the last hour is your attitude is just, it's awesome.
Thank you so much.
I had the pleasure of watching your reel when I was, stalking you on Instagram briefly. And I found your reel and I was like, oh, cool. So I watched that. There's a lot of violence and a lot of the work that I saw, only having seen Serial. So that's the only context I have, but then watching your reel. And I appreciated how direct you are with it. You really don't shy away from it, but it's also, it seems to be this thread that goes through the work that you've done. So I just wanted to, we talked a little bit about violence in films before, but I want to kind of circle back on that and just kind of get your take on why you feel like that is such an important thing to talk about and your approach to it.
Well, I'll explain it like this. So we watch football, right? Football is entertaining to us, right? But when you really think about it, football is just these dudes that hit each other for this ball to score touchdowns. And then you go into another sport like boxing, where people fight each other in a ring and you pay money to sit around and watch that. Okay, let's go to UFC, where people stand in an octagon now and not just punch, but also kick each other. And we sit down and we pay to watch this. So it's this thing within that pulls your attention. It pulls your attention when you have this tension rising within this character that you see is bubbling. So when something actually happens, it grabs your attention and it pulls you in because you now understand this character even more, because I now understand his downfall. I now understand why he's doing the things he's doing. I now understand why he's being violent. And that violence, again, pulls the viewer in to look at the bigger picture. Okay, so even if you're not watching or not paying attention to the movie and you walk in and you see a kid swinging a baseball bat on the ground and blood is flying up, you're like, why is this kid beating his parents? Like, why? And you want to understand. And that's just kind of what violence does inherently. So why not take advantage of that?
I love that explanation because I feel like it is very different from a lot of, very different reflection from a lot of the violence that we consume. The fact that you're really using it to understand people better, instead of just violence for the sake of violence, which isn't productive and can be really damaging to individuals, to society. Like there's this whole, we could talk for hours about violence in film and media. And for lack of a better way of saying it, you're using it for good instead of evil. So I really commend you for that. Like that's a great answer to that question. And it's good that you're thinking about that and you're really utilizing it in a way that it should be utilized.
Thank you.
And I had a follow-up question, Dusan. Sorry for keeping you
Oh no,
here,
I love
but
it.
as younger filmmakers, you want to be provocative. You want to put your stamp on something. You want to be like, this is who I am. Do you have any advice to our students and how they can? Some of them are just a couple years younger than you are, and what they can do to kind of give themselves, put a stamp on their work. And just in general, filmmaking advice do you have for them?
Here's what worked for me. What I did was I would write log lines and scripts for fun daily, every day, whether it's 5 pages, whether it's 2 pages, whether it's just a list. I have 100. I just have 100 log lines, just cause a few are commercials, a few are features, just a bunch of stuff to work my mind in connecting dots and understanding story, so that after I've done the work of, okay, so I've outlined the story from here to here. Okay, so I know what's going to happen from page 1 to page 5, and I'm going to do this all the way for 130 pages. I can go in and say, okay, so from page 1 to page 5, I can freestyle, I can sketch, I can throw paint on the canvas and do what I want because I understand the rules, I understand the structure, because I've sat down and wrote every day. And then that also applies to filmmaking. You get on a bunch of sets, you understand the rules and the way that light falls or the way that the camera moves, and then you say, okay, so I have this sketch here, and now I can throw paint on the canvas because I understand how these functions move together.
That's great. I mean, this has been so wonderful. I feel like we could keep talking forever. So
oh yeah, no, we could. I would be down to, actually. I love this stuff.
And I don't want to hold you up too much longer, but I think well, for one, I want to say thank you again for taking the time. I think you might be our first young filmmaker that we've had. So I want to kind of end on this. Really, we got a great comment in the chat that I want to read from one of our students that said, thank you. I was really struggling with what I wanted to do. This class has started growing on me, and hearing what you said about where Dusan started and where he's now and your advice to us makes me feel a lot better. Maybe I have a chance.
No, you do. Not maybe, you do. That's the thing. It's not maybe, you do. You just work toward that. There's no maybe, you just do it.
And what a great reaction to that too.
Yeah.
Dusan, like I'm telling you, you are going to do amazing things.
Thank
I
you.
hope you remember us when. That's really how you're going to go do all the things. And you should. You're the type of person that I'm rooting for you. I think we are all rooting for you because this is what we need. This kind of attitude and this kind of voice, in filmmaking and storytelling, man, you got it. We've got all kinds of thank yous and keep up the amazing work happening in the chat. And Caleb saying that he'll probably see you again on TV.
Yeah, what a funny guy. What a funny guy.
Mariah said she really loved the movie. I mean, this has just been great. So thank you so much for taking the time. It's just been a real pleasure. And I'm really excited to watch your career because it's just going to keep going. You're going to do all kinds of cool things. I know it.
And thanks
So-
for having me. And I'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.